Hold on. Let me rewind that. I want to hear exactly what he said so I can just talk to.
Hello, I'm Lisa Marie Falbo with breaking news. New Jersey Senator Robert Menendez was found guilty on all counts in his corruption trial. Joining us now with analysis is ONNJ Jersey chief political reporter Laura Jones. Laura,
Lisa,
what
it's
is
good
the
to.
latest?
Yeah, Bob Menendez right now, as we speak, he is addressing the public at a press conference, and he said, "I never before have violated my oath in public office." His attorneys just said, "We are surprised, we are disappointed, we believe in his innocence. There are grave appellate problems, and we will be pursuing all of those avenues as we speak." Again, that is Bob Menendez reacting right outside the federal courthouse in Manhattan, just as we were going on air right now. But to recap, Bob Menendez was convicted on federal bribery charges at a Manhattan courthouse today. It is a stunning fall from grace for the U.S. Senator, the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Menendez was accused by federal prosecutors of accepting bribes, of cash, gold bars, a Mercedes. He was charged with 16 counts of bribery and found guilty on all 16 counts of bribery. At this point, he must now decide if he's going to continue his bid for reelection and also to determine if he's going to stay in the U.S. Senate. He has until August 26th to make a decision on if he's going to stay in the race for Senate. There is nothing in the U.S. Senate that says if you are indicted that you have to step down. However, calls are coming in right now as we speak for the senator to resign. It has been, historically speaking, nobody's been expelled from the U.S. Senate since the 19th century. It's only happened about 15 times. So what's happened is people have either resigned from office or their term has expired. So we will have to see as time progresses what happens. At this point, Menendez's attorneys say again they are surprised and disappointed. Bob Menendez says he never violated his oath of office. Prosecutors came out and spoke to reporters right after the verdict, and what they said is this case is about corruption. Again, this is a U.S. Attorney's Office speaking. It is about hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash, gold bars, and a Mercedes. It is not politics as usual. It is politics for profit. And after years of selling access to his office, that is now over. This was a joint investigation by the FBI, IRS, and prosecutor's office. At this point, Bob Menendez will be back in court. He's due to be sentenced on October 29th. If you look at the maximum of the sentencing guidelines and what he could face, it's up to 20 years, I believe, on each count if it would run concurrently. And some of the math that I've looked at would mean over 220 years in prison. That probably isn't likely, but that is kind of worst case scenario. So again, this is unfolding, breaking as you and I are speaking right now, looking at what exactly it means now and what the next steps are. So Lisa, that's kind of a little look at where we are right here, right now.
Menendez is maintaining his innocence, but very strong words are coming out of Trenton right now. Governor Murphy put out a statement, as did Andy Kim. What are they saying?
Yeah, Andy Kim said enough is enough. We've had enough corruption in New Jersey. Governor Murphy weighed in. He said that he has betrayed his oath of office. So those are strong words. Again, the last time Menendez was on trial, he had people testifying on his behalf. Senator Cory Booker, Lindsey Graham. He had a lot of support. This time, after that indictment came out in September, people were not standing by him this time. They were urging him to step aside back then. He did not. He is maintaining his innocence. He is still maintaining his innocence. This is one very determined, headstrong individual who his attorneys are saying, listen, we're going to look at every single appeals process. And they even indicated there are grave appellate problems, like there's a problem with the process. I think that they believe that he's been unfairly painted, and he wasn't, and they're going to pursue all of those options. So again, Chuck Schumer has also come out and said, and he had up until now he had stayed quiet, but now he is saying, time has come, please resign. The U.S. Senate is out right now. They'll be back next week. So again, we'll have to see what happens. They haven't had to expel anybody since the 19th century, around the time of the Civil War. There have certainly been other senators indicted, and there have been others convicted, but they have not had to been expelled because, again, either their term would expire, which Menendez's term is expiring, or they would resign. So again, he's got until August 26th to determine if he's going to continue to stay in this race. That sentencing, by the way, October 29th, that's just days before that November election. So you never know in New Jersey, Lisa. That's really once you think, well, I can't imagine somebody staying in the race. I can't imagine somebody trying to hold on to that seat. I can't imagine how you'd even maintain if you do decide to stay in the race and you've got until October 29th. I don't know how many people are actually going to be able to support you to be able to finance that campaign, but it's Jersey. You never know.
Unbelievable. How, if he does resign or get forced to resign, how does this tip the scales in Washington?
Oh, right. Well, I mean, I think that's going to be a chip that he tries to use to a bargaining chip, right? Because there's such a slim majority in the Senate right now. However, when you look at the election, and that might be part of his strategy too, just to stay in that seat. I mean, as of right now, it really looks like Andy Kim would win that seat. But he's definitely going to use that whatever power he has, that whatever ability he has to bargain and to try and hold on to something, he will hold on to it. But again, this isn't a seat that this seat is up in November, or in October, at the first of the year. November will determine who the next senator is. So so he's going to, again, use that. It's not like if he were to resign that Governor Murphy would be able to step in and say, okay, well, let me appoint a successor. Even if he did right now, it most likely would be Andy Kim. But looking at that timeline, he's got until August 26th to make a final determination. Nothing in the rules of the U.S. Senate says somebody has to step down if they are convicted of a federal crime. So this is something that's going to have to taken up within the walls of Washington in the upper house.
His son is running for office in November. How does that affect him here in the state?
Yeah, well, he won the primary, and it was a close race. It was a bitter race, and the Hoboken mayor really tried to paint him and his father under that same brush, but it didn't stick. People saw that Rob Menendez didn't have anything to do with this. He was not indicted, so that did not stick. And that is a very, very strong Democratic area in the 10th district. I might be messing up, but in Hudson County area. So whoever wins the primary is the one that typically goes on to win the general election as well. But from a personal perspective, boy, I can't imagine what must be happening. His wife, Nadine, was also charged, but she has health issues. She's battling breast cancer, so that has been put off indefinitely. But again, Menendez and the co-conspirators, they were all found guilty on all charges today. I don't think this really impacts his son, not at this point, not at this time, not from a political office. But personally, I can't imagine what must be going on behind closed doors right now.
And Laura, personally, are you surprised by this verdict?
Yes and no, because I was surprised last time that it ended in a hung jury. Looking at all the evidence, he, along with Salman Melgen, had been, accused of, pay for play, and the co-conspirator, he was found guilty. He's in prison, and somehow Menendez got out on a hung jury. But when you start looking back and seeing how long the prosecutor's office, this Southern District in New York, how long they've been looking into this for years, and it looks like, according to some of the reports I read, that it was a matter of a very short amount of time before he was found not guilty, or the hung jury in that last trial, before he was actually starting this up again, more or less, according to prosecutors, selling himself for access to his office. Now he's saying, I've never betrayed my oath. And you don't understand how things work. The money belonged to Nadine, throwing his wife under the bus. The jury did not agree. You had some pretty powerful images of those gold bars, cash shoved in shoes. It's really hard to get past that when you're a jury. So it will be interesting again as time goes on to start to hear from the jurors. But prosecutors went into this feeling very, very confident. They had been building this case, we're learning now, for years, and he's been engaging in this, according to prosecutors, pretty much since the last time he narrowly escaped going to prison back in 2018.
Do you think he's going to prison now? I mean, is there no turning back from this point today?
I think he's going to prison. Yeah. I mean, you never want to try and guess what a judge is going to do, but he's found guilty on 16 counts, each one carrying 20-year sentences. I think they will certainly take into account his age, right? Because he's over 70 years old or 70 years old. 70 years old, we'll say. So a 10-year, 15-year sentence, that could potentially be a death sentence for him. So we'll see how the judge, weighs everything in. Again, his legal team has said, listen, we're going to be pursuing an appeal. No doubt we're going to be looking at this entire process. And, we believe that there are actually grave problems with what had happened today. So, but it looks kind of inevitable. When you just take a look at it, like, I don't know how you get out of that. I don't know what the minimum sentencing guidelines are. So we'll be, trying to dig and figure that out for quite some time, or over the next few weeks, trying to figure out, and again, you never want to try and guess what a judge or a jury is going to do.
Yeah. But any other reaction coming in from the Twitterverse?
Right. I mean, that's it. It is just going, my phone is blowing up right now. So yeah, so many people are reacting. I believe there have been 30 senators at this point who have called for him to step down, and now those calls are coming back again. Governor Murphy weighed in, said he had betrayed the office. Andy Kim said enough is enough with, corruption in New Jersey. He needs to step down. He needs to do the right thing. I haven't heard anything from Cory Booker as of yet. That would be now New Jersey's other senator. Haven't heard anything from Curtis Bashaw, who is the Republican who is running against Andy Kim for that U.S. Senate seat. And that'll be another interesting dynamic, Lisa, that we can talk about it at some point. I'd love to get some other political analyst point of view. Will this impact Andy Kim in a negative way? Probably not. But will Republicans on the national stage try and say, well, listen, New Jersey, you've got dirty politicians going back for years. Now you've got a Democrat who's been convicted. Time for a change. You haven't had a Republican in office since the 70s. Maybe now is the time for change. So there could be a little bit of a shift in perhaps resources that Curtis Bashaw gets on the Republican side.
All right. Laura, just seismic activity here today. I mean, a ton of news on the national political scene between this, what happened in Pennsylvania with the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. It's the RNC this week. I mean, as a Politico, your mind must be blown right now.
And don't forget, today is a special election for Congressman Donald Payne, who passed away. So we have 11 people running for that seat as well. And it is a lot going on. Today is a huge day in New Jersey on the national stage as well. Polls are open right now for Donald Payne's congressional seat. Now, with so many people running, we'll see how close that is, and if we get a decision tonight, depending on how many voters turn out, how close that is, because with 11 candidates, that can really split the vote. And because it's just one congressional seat, it isn't a statewide seat. It's that one congressional seat. It is definitely a very, very busy day in the world of New Jersey politics, for sure. And they say things happen.
Here to talk about the bombshell, we have John Wisniewski joining us now. John, welcome.
Thanks for having me on.
What are your thoughts about the bombshell news happening today?
Well, I think it was to be expected when you just read from the outside the evidence that was presented to the jury, the gold bars, the cash, the car. It made it very clear that the jury was likely to convict, and they did. The calls by the senator and other co-defendants' attorneys that the jury got it wrong is just something you would expect an unsuccessful defense attorney to say. I don't think it has any traction. I don't think it's going anywhere. But let's not forget that when Harrison Williams was convicted 43 years ago, he served for another 10 months as a U.S. Senator. I suspect Bob Menendez, with only 5 months left to his term, is going to continue to serve until it ends.
Right. And John, that's one of the things I wanted to talk about as well is that, for people who may not know the name Harrison Williams, that's the abs scandal in New Jersey going back to the 70s, where you had so many, upwards of 10 people convicted and a significant bribery ring. And there's nothing in the U.S. Senate that says that he has got to step down. So can
That's
you give us
correct.
a little, historically speaking, right, of where we stand, the decision the U.S. Senate has to make, especially when you look at how very close the razor's thin margin that divides control.
Yeah, it wasn't until there was actually going to be a vote to expel Harrison Williams 43 years ago that he decided to resign. And the deciding factor was that his junior U.S. Senator, Bill Bradley, announced that he would vote to expel Harrison Williams, and the very next day he resigned. That process took many months to unfold, and so we don't have that many months left. The Senate, for most of the summer, is going to be on recess. There's Senate elections coming up in November. There's not a lot of time for the U.S. Senate to do it. They could, and I would urge them to do it, but I think it's likely that Senator Menendez will finish out his term and Andy Kim will be sworn in his seat in January of 25.
Right. So can you talk just a little bit about, you are somebody in Trenton, this, even though he's a representative in Washington, D.C., this is still a very small political world. You've known, we all have another side to Bob Menendez. When he came out following the guilty verdict, and, he is maintaining that he's never betrayed his oath. What was going through your mind, having known him also on a professional level as well?
Sure. Well, it's vintage Bob Menendez. He will continue to advocate for himself. And I think what becomes very clear when you hear what he said today and what you've heard him say over the months, that this is about him. This is not about New Jersey. This is not about the U.S. Senate, which is to all of our disadvantage. And I think that it really, if we want to understand why there is some cynicism in the public about elected officials, Bob Menendez is Exhibit 1.
Right, right. Do you think that, legally speaking, his team of attorneys came out and said, let me make sure I'm referring to my notes correctly, and I rewound it. They said there are some grave appellate problems. What are they hinting at? Because we had the U.S. attorney come out, members of the FBI, IRS said, listen, this case is about corruption. This is not politics as usual. This is politics for profit. And what is his defense team suggesting? What did you draw from that?
Well, there was one attorney who talked about the jury got the facts wrong. That's almost not reviewable. Courts give enormous discretion to the jury to be the arbiter of the facts. And whatever the jury decides the facts are, really that case is closed. Now, with regard to appellate issues, they're going to argue that the judge instructed the jury incorrectly, that a lot of the issues that were raised about Bob Menendez being a foreign agent are really protected under the debate clause. And obviously, there's kind of overcasting on all of this is the recent U.S. Supreme Court decision about presidential immunity, right? They're going to be parroting some of the same language, not because Bob Menendez has presidential immunity, but he's got senatorial immunity, that this was part of his official role as a U.S. Senator.
Right. And that's what he's maintained, that, that there are meetings, there are certain things that happened, and he more or less threw his wife under the bus by saying, well, no, that was her, that this isn't mine.
Yeah.
This is her. You don't understand how the Cuban culture works. We keep our money. We keep going.
Yeah.
We keep things in our house.
I've got to be honest with you. If there was one thing that his defense team portrayed, I mean, obviously the senator didn't testify, but it was clear that from his attorney's perspective and what they presented, throwing your wife under the bus is never a good move in front of a jury. And I think that it's reeked of desperation on the part of the senator's defense. And I think that really factored into their calculation. Gold bars, money with fingerprints, Mercedes-Benz, text messages, and he's throwing his wife under the bus. This is a desperate man who's willing to do anything to clear his name.
And to add insult to injury, his wife Nadine, who again is charged, her trial has been postponed because she's in the fight of her life battling breast cancer as well. I
Yeah,
mean,
it's
it's stunning.
it's a Shakespearean tragedy of really large proportion here. But the bottom line here isn't whether or not Bob Menendez was doing his job. He took money for doing his job. That is illegal.
Right. John Wisniewski, thank you so much for coming on and hopping on, reacting to this stunning, absolutely stunning news. Huge day in New Jersey. Thank you for coming on to talk to us.
My pleasure. Good to be with you.
Yeah. So, Lisa, in the days ahead, we are going to be still trying to take in all of this information, figure out where we go from here. But, definitely it is a huge day. And it is, as we're getting closure on what a lot of people suspected, it's a dark day for New Jersey. Our U.S. Senator was found guilty of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. He sold his office. Now he is convicted of selling it. It isn't alleged anymore. He's convicted. Of course, he can certainly appeal, and he isn't maintaining his innocence. But we, the people in New Jersey, they are the stewards of our money. They go to Washington to fight for us, to fight for what we deserve back here in New Jersey. And to see that this has happened it's very disappointing for all the people in New Jersey. Something no doubt those running Andy Kim, Curtis Bashaw will be talking about is bringing, honor, integrity back to public office, because a lot of us, a lot of people are very cynical when it comes to elected officials. And people make jokes about New Jersey all the time. Will this be a joke to some people? Yeah, I'm sure it will be. But for people who live here, it's really sad, because there's somebody who is now convicted of selling his office to benefit himself. And as John Wisniewski had pointed out, not to benefit the people of New Jersey, the state of New Jersey. There wasn't a grand plan here. It was to benefit Bob Menendez, to keep that. His wife wanted a Mercedes. He had gold bars. He had cash, and it's a very, very, very sad day.
Very sad. Well, Laura, I know you're going to be all over it. Stay tuned to ONNJ.com for more on this bombshell verdict. I'm Lisa Marie Falbo, and thank you for joining us for this special report. Good?